So I'm going to show you how to replace a hub bearing on a Mini Cooper. So basically, you need to get the axle nut off. You need to use a screwdriver or a punch and a hammer to bend out the tab that's on the axle nut in order for it to spin off. To get the axle nut off, take the center cap out of the wheel and put the wheel back on the car and lower it down a little bit so that the wheel touches the ground and there's a good amount of weight on it. And use a 3/4 inch drive ratchet set with a 32mm socket and probably a 4 or 5 foot piece of black pipe as a breaker bar. These nuts are on there very tight. I would not recommend using an impact gun if you plan on reusing your CV axle, because an impact gun can shock the axle or strip the threads out on the axle shaft. With the ratchet, the force is transferred through the wheel into the ground rather than through the axle. I did this after I disconnected the ball joint, so you may want to do this before you disconnect the ball joint. It'll be a lot easier. You need to remove the lower ball joint. We'll have a separate video on the lower ball joint. Pop the axle out. You can see the hub is right there, and there are 4 bolts holding it on, and those bolts are about 13mm. There's also an ABS sensor here. I think it's an ABS. It goes down into here. So you just want to be mindful of that. I don't think you have to remove it if you're going to be hammering for some reason. Then you'll want to remove it. Just put a jack under the lower control arm to kind of hold this up while you're wrenching on these bolts so that this doesn't move all over the place. Now that those bolts are out, just get the old hub out. So here's the new hub bearing. It's made by Detroit Axle. It's been a really good bearing so far, so I will put a link in the description where you can get one for yourself. These 4 nuts get torqued to 41 foot-pounds. Put a little grease in the splined area. Then you can fit it all back together. You should really use a new axle nut, but I'm not going to. In some places I've read the axle nut gets torqued to 134 foot-pounds, in other places I've read 150 foot-pounds, but I go with 134. And after the axle nut is torqued, you need to bend the tab on the nut back in to where the keyway is on the axle shaft so that the nut does not back out. Don't forget to reattach the lower ball joint and brake caliper. If you need the torque specs, please see my other videos. I'm going to have a front end series that covers the brake caliper, ball joint, bushings, inner ball joint, and inner tie rod. I guess that'll include outer tie rod too. As always, thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe.